And that is the sound of the incredible Slovenian fans cheering Primoz Roglic to his Giro d'Italia win. Unbelievable. The fairy tales, the stories that came out of that. I am Kate Bates. We are here for the wheelhouse again. Unfortunately, like most of the east coast of Australia, Joel has been struck down with the flu. So it is simply an empty chair where Joel normally sits. He does have the Parramatta jersey sitting there in lieu of him. But get well soon, Joel. But drafted in, co-host in the making, in the training, Merckxy, you're back.
Ah, this is twice now. I've got to have more energy according to the feedback from last time. So I've had a Red Bull, Kate.
Oh, excellent. You got to get excited.
I'm tired after that Giro d'Italia.
Oh my gosh. I actually think that a whole heap of the couch peloton cohort are down with the flu as well, because it is pretty tough for Aussie cycling fans to stay up to ridiculous o'clock to cheer it on. And I've got to say, there was a lot of mutterings, especially with Remco leaving early, that it was going to be one of the more boring tours that we've ever seen. Fairy tale after fairy tale. I don't think, Merckxy, my view is that it certainly was not boring.
Oh, the last week made up for it. Like it was a little bit slow, those first few weeks, let's be honest. But it was just a grind, the weather was horrendous. And it was just about who could stay in the race really. And our very own Jay Vine, documented his struggles with the cold and just how tough it was. So those first few weeks, I think, were just about staying on the bike, staying safe, and just getting through that horrendous weather and those horrid conditions.
It kind of brings a whole new meaning to you got to be in it to win it. Like you literally have to still be in the race if you want to win it.
I've got some numbers for you. Listen to this, right? 3,489 total kilometres, right? 51,000 metres of altitude gain across the whole 3 weeks. But the worst or best number, 14 seconds, Kate. 14 seconds is what Primoz won the whole Grand Tour by. It's mind-blowing.
All of that and 14 seconds. Quite remarkable. And for anybody who was watching live and also interacting on social media, I tell you what, Twitter was like a bomb because every time something would happen, it would be a big comment on how poor Primoz was going to lose this tour in the way that he won the Tour de France in 2020. I feel as though, Merckxy, there were some fans with a little bit of post-traumatic stress going on who were just absolutely on the edge of their seats wondering if he could pull it off. But aside from the fact that he did pull it off, and by only 14 seconds, it's the way that he did it. It was like remarkable. You couldn't write, honestly, Hollywood could not write the race itself with the mechanical and even with the location of it.
I know. Can we talk about the mechanical? Like, talk about edge of your seat. We were falling off our seat. Was that, watching that, and as you say, Twitter, it was like, is he going to lose this again? It's like, the Tour de France when his teammates were watching it slip away, and it was incredible. And I think the fans, his Slovenian fans, because where the time trial was very close to the border. So he actually said that the fans gave him extra watts, which is hard not to believe. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, they're pretty iconic images of Primoz Roglic coming up to the finish and with all of the Slovenian fans. So it wasn't just that it was close to the border, because it is this little pocket in Italy, Mount Lasari, between Austria on one side and Slovenia on the other side. But it allowed a bit of history for him and a little bit of connection to the place. So you mentioned a mechanical. So he did get a mechanical while he was climbing the hill, and a fella in a red shirt came to the rescue, pushing him, as well as the Jumbo mechanic was giving him a helping hand. That spawned all these people on Twitter to literally say, I can't believe he's just lost the Giro like this. Like, people just gave up on him straight away. But in the end, then the hunt was underway for this guy in the red shirt. They were like, who is this magic guy who helped him? And in seriously fairy tale Merckxy, it ended up being a good friend of his that he used to ski jump with and he used to share a room with when they ski jumped together,
You couldn't
which is
write
pretty
that script.
remarkable. You could not write it. And apparently, all of them, the former ski jump teammates and the national coach, Mitchum Mesner, his name was, lined themselves. They came up with a plan, right? Every 300 meters up the climb, they were one by one to make sure that he pretty much didn't go a single section without having somebody cheering for him personally and really urging him on. So it's not just that there are all these Slovenian fans with flags, which is incredibly powerful, but they were people really special to him and his sporting journey who one after the other. And so whether the mechanical happened here or further up the climb or further down the climb, there essentially would have been a former colleague, teammate, or coach there to help him. So, I mean, it was just beautifully. It was beautifully done. And it's like a cool running story. Like, I just love these stories. You really
Yeah,
can't write them.
it was incredible to witness. Also beautiful was the podium. He had his little boy on the podium, did the ski jump pose that he always does on top of the podium. But I know it's controversial about having your kids on the podium, but I thought it was a
Oh,
nice
no.
touch.
I think it was a beautiful moment, right? It was needed.
And Gerraint Thomas, he had his child up there as well. So speaking of Gerraint, I mean, I know you and Joel tipped Primoz. He's just my favourite, Gerraint. I mean, who could not love him after that Grand Tour?
That's true. And there's been some commentary about that too. Like, yeah, I've always found him to be a little bit vanilla and there's nothing too much we've liked about him. But it's hard to not love him and respect him for the incredible sporting show that he put on. I mean, not just because he nearly won the Giro, because huge feat after all of those kilometres, as you say, only 14 seconds, but just his manner, the way he spoke about it. And after the time trial, when he knew it was over, because that final stage is really processional. Uh, and he said, he was just better than me. And he said, it's better to have been smashed by Primoz and lose like that than it to be super close. And ultimately, Primoz did kind of smash him in the time trial sense. And so I think that gave Gerraint a little bit of comfort in the situation. But we discussed last week, it was his 37th birthday. He made a few jokes himself about being an old man, but he got it over the line. But I just think, especially when so many of the stories, and certainly coming into the Tour de France, we're going to be talking about Evenepoel, we're going to be talking about Vingegaard, we're going to be talking about Roglic. Pogacar, wrong Slovenian. These are the young guys, like they're in many ways still kids. I love that the sport still also has the contrast of these stories like Thomas and Roglic, who are older, more mature athletes and have a bit more of a story behind them. So I think if you didn't love Gerraint Thomas at the beginning, you would at least respect the heck out of him now. And I think he's made himself very available to fans. He does a podcast every night, literally.
He does. It rates
Yeah.
nearly as well as the Wheelhouse. I've had a look at the statistics. He's doing really well. So go search for the Gerraint Thomas podcast after you listen to this one.
Yes, What's Occurring, I believe, is what it's called. So it's a cool and it's a clever name, and I think that how he finished the Giro off Merckxy with his reinforcing his long-time beautiful friendship with Cav. I think that's
Oh,
something that is going to be one of the defining moments of Cav's career and of any kind of show of sportsmanship in the sport.
yeah. I think we need to talk more about that. Mark Cavendish, he announced during the Giro d'Italia that it was his last Giro and his last season. 2023 will be his last season. But we do need to talk about, he left it pretty late, didn't he, to win a stage. Sprinting into Rome, wins the last stage of the Giro. But back to Gerraint, he did it with the help of his former Sky teammate. who helped lead him out.
Yeah, it's not the first lead out he's had from Gerraint Thomas, I can tell you that. I mean, they were teammates together at Sky, and they've worked together at the Giro as well. And I think that what was so beautiful about the moment is it's poetic for Mark Cavendish to win a Grand Tour stage at the Giro, the final stage, no less, going into Rome, when this will be his final season, because I don't know that he will get up at the Tour de France. If he does, fantastic. But this would beautifully bookend a career that his Grand Tour victories started at the Giro. So, right, again, Hollywood, hello.
He's going to win a stage.
He
will break the record.
Him and Peter Sagan.
He will break
Peter Sagan's back, Merckxy?
Up against the fence.
What was so remarkable about the stage win was that he essentially won because of Gerraint Thomas's lead out, not his own team. So are Astana super pleased to get the stage win? Or are they kind of putting their tail between their legs and a little bit embarrassed now that Cavendish can possibly legitimately say that he could have won a lot more stages had he had the team to back him up?
Lead-out train. Yeah, but I love what Gerraint Thomas said after that. He said, well, if I can't win the thing, I'm going to help an old mate win the stage. And I think,
there were some pretty beautiful embraces afterwards. And
there really was. He's a passionate guy, Cav.
And these Cav and Thomas have not only been teammates at Sky, but of course for Great Britain and Olympics and on the track as well. And the story I told on last week's podcast about Gerraint Thomas rupturing his spleen in an accident in Sydney ahead of a track World Cup. That was the first time that Mark Cavendish won a gold medal in a track World Cup. So they have a lot of beautiful moments between them supporting each other. And I thought it was a beautiful way to go. I did say last week that I reckon it would be pretty beautiful and poetic. That's my favourite word of this week, for Cav to win in Glasgow at the World Championships at home, in home colours. Like, oh my goodness, it would just be like everyone from the Isle of Man would be there, and everyone from Wales will be there for Gerraint Thomas. But I don't think they will set it up to happen, because then, well, you don't have a jersey in the peloton for next year, and that would be potentially seen as a little bit disrespectful. But if I was Hollywood, Merckxy, that's how I would be finishing this story.
Well, I think Hollywood writers wrote the last two stages of the Giro d'Italia, so strap yourself in for Worlds. No, incredible. It was an incredible Grand Tour. The weather, just to finish the race is an accomplishment in itself. And I think you wanted to give a shout out to, who was it?
Yes, it is. You're right. Now, I don't know the Italian word for Lanterne Rouge, but that's what we call the final finisher at the Tour de France. So our Lanterne Rouge of the Giro d'Italia was Nicolas Dallaval. Now, I want to give him a shout out. He rides for Corotech because he finished in 124th position, so 124 finishes out of 176 starters, 5 hours, 26 minutes and 45 seconds in arrears of Primož Roglic, which by my estimation, Merckxy, he's done 22 stages.
He's done an extra stage.
Yeah, an extra stage. So 22 for Dallaval, and I reckon there's as many stories that happen at the back that there is at the front.
Oh, amazing to everyone that finished that bike race. I just can't believe it.
Oh, I know. Well, there was a fellow that I grew up with racing at Parramatta Cycling Club called Trent Wilson. And Trent went and raced in a lot of Italian teams and learnt the language and he was a good climber, quite a handy racer. And he rode the Giro d'Italia, and he's got some great stories about it. But mostly, as you say, just surviving, just getting to the end in any way that you possibly can is a massive victory. And we had some young Aussies out there too. So I think all in all, this is going to be one of the most memorable ones, for the highs, for the lows, all of it. I'm exhausted.
I need some sleep. I'm exhausted too. It's the toughest Giro I've ever done. But now it turns to what's next, and particularly what's next for the champion the winner, Primoz Roglic, reports out of Switzerland that he
Ooh.
may line up at the Tour de Suisse.
Well, so we've got kind of two races coming up that are big ones ahead of the Tour de France, because of course you can just call it the Tour and everybody knows what you're talking about. We've got the Dauphiné and we've got Tour of Swiss. Dauphiné tends to be more pure climbing, and the Tour of Swiss, they tend to have a few more stages that the sprinters can win. And typically people kind of divide their resources across the two races, and often that means that the favourites won't meet. They might take opposite programs. But so the Dauphiné, we're expecting to see Jumbo back on the high. I mean, after winning the Giro, but with some fresh horses, because Vingegaard's back, Christophe Laporte. We'll see them in action, and he'll be very much um, going for some big results there, especially on the climbs. And fair to say that when he has started this year, he's been in pretty good climbing form. So I'm looking forward to that. The Dauphiné, we've got Primoz Roglic. He won last year. He won't be back, but Vingegaard was second last year. And you know who was third? And you know who's coming back, Merckxy?
Tell me.
Glutes O'Connor.
Oh, glutes. Yeah, we missed
Glutes is
glutes.
back.
Oh,
So we're looking forward to seeing him do his climby thing. And then Tour of Swiss, if Roglic is in fact back for that, I mean, it's one of the races that he hasn't won before, so he could be on a bit of a mission there. But Gerraint Thomas actually won that last year. And so I don't believe Gerraint Thomas Merckxy will be there again, though, because rumours are that he's headed to Ibiza to find a beer keg or something
and who
like
could
that.
blame him too? There's a bit of chat about where we'll see the rainbow jersey of Remco Evenepoel pop up.
Ooh.
What do you reckon?
I don't know. I mean, I think people are going to talk about it until he has a firm plan. There'd be a lot of pressure on him to get racing again, and then a lot of eyeballs. I think it is a very tough time to come back to racing if you're not focusing on the Tour de France. So for him to do Dauphiné or Tour of Swiss, there'll probably be unnecessarily a lot of pressure on him when he's not then going on to aim for the Tour de France. So I reckon that we may not even see him racing for a little while, because he may just really be preparing for the national championships, which are a big goal of his. And then, of course, leading into
Worlds.
Glasgow, where he wants to not only defend his road race title, but win the time trial. If I was Team Remco, I'd protect him a little bit from the craziness that's been. Let him do his thing and just bring him out when he's ready. But it kind of highlights that we now, go back 12 months ago and everybody was just talking about Pogacar, who can beat him? Will he ever be beaten? Lo and behold, Vingegaard did. And all of a sudden now we've got this almost stable of different athletes that we're talking about challenging. So I think that between the Dauphiné and seeing Jumbo back over at Swiss, Wout van Aert is going to be out for Jumbo as well. So we've got a few exciting races coming up. It's going to be hard to beat the Giro, though. I mean, just from an entertainment point of view.
Absolutely. Now, you mentioned Pogacar. He posted during the week he's out of the kitchen. And
Good, yeah, good.
He's out of the kitchen where he was on his trainer, and he's been back on the bike, which is really good to see. He posted some shots on his TT bike, and he's got a little wrist guard on. But good to see him back in training, and we hope to see him racing very soon.
Yes, we do. We last talked about him when he was doing toe crunches, and we kind of pontificated over what a toe crunch may be. It turns out it's an ab exercise where you lie on your back and put your legs in the air and try and touch your toes using your abdominal muscles. Now, why are we talking about this, you might ask, Merckxy? Because it says to me that looking after things like your core strength, they're the small things that can make such a positive impact and difference in terms of injury and longevity through tours, but often gets kind of left behind a bit because you've got so many other things to focus on. So he has taken this time to step back and drill in on all of those little things. He's got abs of steel now. It's reported from all the toe crunching. And I'm excited to see him racing again, actually. If
Oh,
nothing else, I reckon he'll be bored. So I think
incredible
he'll
athlete.
animate it.
And speaking of abs of steel, Joel will be back next week for our 50th episode, Catherine Lindsay. So get well, Joel. We miss you. Now, moving on from the Giro d'Italia and Pogacar's wrist, let's go to London, Kate.
Let's zoom on over in the wheelhouse private jet over to London because the women have been racing Ride London and some pretty interesting results actually. Merckxy, we saw Chloe Dygert back in action for Canyon SRAM. It's been a pretty long-awaited return to the sport actually because she had some people might remember horrific leg injury at the World Championships a couple of years ago in the time trial, and she hit a road barrier on the side and sliced her leg. We didn't know at the time whether she'd be able to return to racing at all. And so I think that in and of itself is a really positive thing to see her back. But, in these new social media times, Merckxy, you've only got to make one bad tweet and you become quite controversial. And she found herself in a bit of hot water, getting a little bit of, I don't know, what do we call it? Like decorum training from Trek Segafredo. I don't
Sensitivity
know.
training. Do you think she'll get back to her best?
Yeah, look, I mean, so at Ride London, she was sensational and she won a stage and ended up second on the GC overall. To come back and have such an impact and be sprinting so well, especially when she's predominantly not a sprinter, I think that we can say that, she's clearly on exceptional form and she's got great legs and a great attitude. And Canyon SRAM are really supporting her. I think, if anything, she's been given a bit of a hard time on social media by the haters. And, all I can say, Merckxy, is if we were all judged by the worst thing we said or the worst day we had,
Oh,
then I think it would be a pretty harsh world. So I want to give her a bit of a second chance and not
absolutely.
write her off and just say it's exciting to have her back.
Yeah, and she did mention, that it is something that the injury will probably affect her for the rest of her career. She said that the blood flow will forever be affected, so she'll have to deal with that and manage with that. So we wish her well. What else was going on at
We do. We
Ride
do.
London?
Well, so we talked about how Chloe Dygert was second. Lizzie Armistead, Lizzie Deignan now, of course, she is back from maternity leave. She was third. Amazing to see her back on the podium because it wasn't too long ago that she was just making up bunch numbers at the classics and getting back into the racing. So she's roaring back, might I add, for exceptionally good timing heading into the Tour de France Femme. But Charlotte Kool, she's so cool. She won the GC. She won the final stage. I knew you'd like that one,
I like
Merckxy,
that.
having a bit of
That's
a
very
giggle.
nice. I see what you did there.
Now, she's at DSM, and last year we remember her as the Mark Renshaw to the Mark Cavendish. She was the most exceptional lead-out rider for Lorena Vibes that you could ever hope for. And I remember watching some of the exceptional moves that Charlotte Kool made and thinking that in her own right, she would be an excellent sprinter because some sprinters are very good as lead out riders, but not necessarily, they can't carry the same sway on their own. But this young lady, I tell you, she has absolutely come leaps and bounds since she's been given that opportunity to step up and not just in the shadow of Lorena Vibes. So Charlotte Kool, big win. I mean, afterwards she said it was just like the team's just so good. Like it's so easy. We don't have to go over the plan 10 times. We instinctively know each other really well. And the lead out is working perfectly. If you contrast that to what was happening over at Canyon SRAM, where Chloe Dygert was saying, we're only just working together as a team because we're all new coming together, then it's a bit of a different story. But to throw in a bit of an Aussie flavour into it as well, big shout to Sarah Roy, who was riding for Canyon SRAM and really helped bring that lead out together for Dygert in the end, and she's had a bit of a rough trot. And also, the wonderful Loretta Hanson is back for Trek, which is fantastic. After what's been a bit of a crappy year for her as well. And Merckxy, did you notice? Not Trek Segafredo anymore. Goodbye coffee.
Li-
Hello Lidl.
Lidl. Is it
The
Lidl?
super
Lidl.
Lidl, the
Lidl.
supermarket.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's from
Lidl is Aldi. I mean, same, slightly
July
different
1.
design, but
July 1, I
yeah.
believe.
So at
Yeah.
the Tour de France, we'll be seeing Lidl Trek. So
It's like
just in case
Little
the
Trek.
commentators ever got
Oh.
used to any team names, thank you, Lidl Trek, for throwing that little bit of a spanner in the works.
And before we leave London, I just would like to give a shout out to Alyssa Balsamo, who had that awful crash in stage 1, in hospital for 4 days. She just got out and is continuing her recovery. But thoughts on
Yeah,
that?
we wish her the best. I mean, that was a rough crash. She broke her jaw on both sides and has had to have a few titanium plates popped in there. Also fractures of a hand that will heal without surgery. And I think by the time that she gets through her rehab with her jaw, that her body will be ready to go. But I think that kind of fall is tough, Mercksy, because it's not just about the physical toll of it and, overcoming a facial reconstruction of sorts, which she's had to have with some plates put in to her lower jaw. I think it can be a bit intimidating to then come back out into the bunch. And so she has said that, she's focusing on the Tour de France Femme, but her participation in that will still be in question. And if there's ever any team that will absolutely look after the welfare, I think that Trek Segafredo will have her back on that one. But yeah, all our best to Alyssa Balsamo. Crashes suck, don't they? I mean,
Oh,
also,
especially when
Tao
it's your
Gegenhardt,
face.
Gerraint Thomas mentioned he was well and truly on the way back up, but I look forward to seeing them back out and racing.
Absolutely. While we're speaking all things ladies, the Giro, the
Oh,
ladies Giro. We have to talk about that. It's a bit of a shit fight,
it is a
Kate.
shit show. You are absolutely right. I could probably come up with some more plum words to describe it too. What's happened is the Italian Federation actually owns the Giro Rossa, the women's Giro, and they then put it out for tender, uh, and that's kind of whoever wins the tender then runs the organisation of it. And the mob that are organising it, they're just no chop, to be honest. So not only are we in a situation now where the race starts on the 30th of June, so less than a month away, and they just announced the courses like last week, and they didn't put a press release out or something. They just dumped a Google Drive link onto their website, which is a bit of a
Amateur hour.
shocker.
Mm.
It's amateur hour. It's a 10-day race. They've put a rest day in the middle of a 10-day race, which just we don't have enough information to know why, except to suggest that there's some monstrous transfers in there. That would be the only reason to do that. But it's since emerged that these are the organisers where last year they were seen as heroes because they had a prize pool of 250,000 euros, which is pretty impressive, especially for women's racing. And for comparison, can I say, Mercksy, in my day at the women's Giro Rossa, you got 500 euros to win the whole thing, the whole Giro, right? So the
Stop it.
thought of 250,000 euros prize pot is massive,
Mm.
except they haven't paid a single dollar to last year's winners yet. So I just think that
Hang on,
they're
hang on.
doing
What do you mean they haven't paid?
they haven't paid. Prize money hasn't been paid yet.
Why
So,
not?
well, good question. Where's the
Well,
UCI chasing this one up?
we'll
I
get
don't
them on the
know, but I
phone.
mean, it truly is a shit show. But the good news is that RCS have the contract for next year, and that's not River City Studios where you are, Mercy. That is the one and the same organisers of the men's Giro d'Italia. So things are looking up, but it seems like for the last year of their contract, this mob they just don't care, and it's a real shame. It's a real disservice to the women's field, and to be honest, I think a lot of the teams will do the absolute minimum to be there and just focus on the Tour de France femme. But it's a shame, especially after we've seen such a beautiful men's Giro. It just really highlights the inequalities there when this is what's happening on the women's side.
Yeah, to have no one paid from last year's race, that's really strange. And we should chase that up and find out why maybe next
Yeah.
week.
Bad
Now,
debtors.
there's a bit
Let's
of
get an
Aussie
answer.
news. He's a mate of the podcast. It's Caleb Ewan. Bit of an ordinary start to the season,
Oh,
but
Caleb.
some good news.
He it is an ordinary start to the season, but he's won a race, Merckxy.
Yes,
He has.
yes.
He's
Now,
won a
now you
race. We
pronounce
can-
it because
Yeah.
because I can't pronounce it.
Okay, so when we were talking about this show, you did say that there is no way that you were prepared to announce this. He has won the Van Merckxy Fences Classic in Belgium.
One more
Um,
time, please.
Van Merckxy.
Van
Fences.
Merckxy.
I'm guessing by the name that if we Googled Van Merckxy Fences, that may be a fencing brand.
Oh yeah.
We do have some of these delightful random sponsors in cycling, but the Van Merckxy's are fences, I would imagine. Now, he won. It's the first win that he's had in his Lotto Destiny colours this year. He self-proclaims that probably the worst start of his career this season has been for him. So that's a bit of a shocker. But he did beat Tim Merlier, which is a pretty big one to beat. He rides for Soudal Quickstep, of course, and Gerraint Tyson as well, who was one of the riders who we thought Caleb beat, but the judges gave it to Gerraint Tyson earlier in the year. Look, this isn't a massive win. Let's not pretend that this is a Grand Tour stage. But what I think it does is, in his mind, it kind of breaks the hex. Like, I think he's had a bit of the yips. Where it doesn't matter what he's done, he's just lost a bit of faith. And sometimes turning that corner is very powerful.
I mean, we did see him win in Adelaide at the beginning
We
of the year.
did in the Aussie national colours.
He wasn't in. That's right. He wasn't in his Lotto Destiny kit.
And I mean, that was sensational for the fans. But I think that's long forgotten in his mind in terms of how his season's been going. So come on, Caleb, you got this.
And we're probably going to see him at the Tour.
I hope so. Yeah. Well, I mean,
too.
because
Good to
of
get that win before the Tour.
The point relegation brouhaha, Lotto Soudal chose not to do the Giro at all because they're not World Tour. So they did have a wild card, but they chose not to exercise it and instead give their riders kind of a more pronounced run in and preparation for the Tour de France. So
And if you're going to miss one, that's the one to miss because it was horrendous, freezing and wet.
yes, Caleb would not have enjoyed the Giro. So I'm glad for his sake that he wasn't there either. But I think that this will see a very sharp direction change for him for the season. I hope so anyway. We get behind Caleb. I feel like since the non-selection at the World Championships in Wollongong last year, and we had a good chat to Bradley McGee on the Wheelhouse podcast about that at the time, and how perhaps Caleb got a little bit ripped off in being left behind. There hasn't been a lot of good news about our Caleb Ewan, so let's hoping that turns around.
I'll put you on the spot though.
Ooh.
Worlds is a sprinter's course. So
It is. Well, yeah, he'd be great in Glasgow. I mean, the difficulty will be to get selected, to be honest, because when you've got riders like Caden Groves and Michael Matthews who've been winning Grand Tour stages in bunch sprints, even though
he couldn't
we know,
be snubbed again, Catherine Lindsay.
but he could be
Come
because
on.
you're not going to take 3 sprinters in a squad.
Well, I guess.
Like that, I mean, that's just doesn't really work. And so, but it will be form based, and May and the Giro will be very quickly out of the minds of selectors when it's coming into selection for Glasgow. So, I mean, let's certainly not negatively write him off in any way. I just think that he will need to get results. He can't rest on the fact that for many years he's been Australia's best sprinter. I think Caden Groves is putting his stake in the ground around that one at the moment too. But maybe that increased competition, Merckxy, is exactly what they both need, like rise the tide so they both rise together.
Possibly, possibly. Well, I hope we see Caleb in Glasgow because it would be a shame two
Me
years in
too.
a row. And he's 28.
Are
Just
you
saying.
are you saying 28 like that's aging, or are we saying that like he's still young?
I'll just leave that alone. But he's
Well, I
28.
mean, if Gerraint Thomas at 37 is a veteran, we'll save Caleb the veteran talk until he ticks over into the next decade of his life, at least.
I mean, he's not as old as Cav or Peter Sagan, but geez, it'd be good to see the three of them there. I'm excited.
It
Now,
would, it would.
before
Dream
we
on,
go,
Merckxy.
we another friend of the podcast, Rupert Guinness. We were going to talk to him this morning, but he's seriously just boarded an aeroplane. He's off to the USA for the race across America.
Yes. Well, I mean, what we didn't ask him when we weren't able to secure a time for him, Merckxy, is he flying at the front pointy end of the plane or not? I don't know. We didn't ask him that.
Well, I
But
know he
the
was in the Qantas Club lounge having a few before he got on the plane at 9 o'clock
yes.
in the morning. So good on him. I would
Yes.
too. But
Well,
it's a big task ahead of him.
it is. So it's a an ultra cycling event, the race across America, and he gave it a crack last year. Uh, didn't go so well, Merckxy. Um, Instead, Roop had to pull out with a bad back. He had a pre-existing kind of back injury and just wasn't able to push through. He did say afterwards that he did probably foresee going in that it wasn't his best preparation, but he wanted to give it a go anyway. This time he is better prepared, and he's got a great support team and ready to go over there. And I heard some rumors of the fellas from Escape Collective were trying to raise a few funds for his campaign by putting out some limited edition merchandise. Have you heard about this Merckxy?
I have heard about it because I bought one.
Stop it. What is it? A
It's been
shirt?
distributed. Here it is. Here's a shot of it. It's it's hideous.
Wow.
But it's
Okay.
been dispatched and it's to help Roop. I mean, he's a fella
Okay.
that's given so much to the sport. And, if you want to get behind him and help him, get across America, because he did try it in 2020, but of course COVID struck, so he did the virtual event.
Yes. Yeah.
But yeah, this is the this is the shirt that it's from Champion System. And it's the shirt they'll help support Rupert do the race across
Yes.
America. But yeah,
Well, look,
it's
it's
coming, and I'll post
distinctive.
a photo when I get it.
Okay.
I'm gonna wear
I
it.
want to see when it, and do you know the history of Roop and his Hawaiian shirts? Because he used
Yeah,
to
of course
turn
I
up
do.
to the Tour de France, to every race with a different Hawaiian shirt on.
Yeah.
And had the Hawaiian shirts not been of slightly different varieties and colors, you could have assumed that he was wearing the exact same one the whole time, but he did mix it up a little bit. I just want to know now, and we will have to ask straight from the horse's mouth, whether he's going to be riding in said paraphernalia. And the race across America, they go from one coast to the other. It's about 3,000 miles. The biggest thing that they battle is riding in the dark and sleep deprivation. So they have a camper behind them that travels. We do have an Australian who's been successful there last year, Merckxy. We had an Aussie winner, didn't we? So
Yeah, he's a Queenslander, that fella.
not just an Aussie, a Queenslander.
Queenslander.
And
Yeah.
says the man, we are fresh from a football code. The NRL had their state of origin
I didn't think you'd
in
mention
Australia.
that. But now that you have,
Well, Merckxy is a through and through Queenslander. And even though I live in Queensland now, I am born and bred in New South Wales, go Para. And Merckxy, go on. Maroons or Blues, what happened?
the Queensland team, of course they won in Adelaide. It's a bit foreign to the Adelaideans, but what a great game.
Yes, well, victory isn't foreign to the Queensland State of Origin team, unfortunately. See, this is where it's good that Joel isn't with us. He would be really rubbing this in. But, Merckxy, we will leave on the high note of wishing Roop absolutely all the best, Rupert Guinness, for his trek across America. Get a little bit of sleep when you can. We will be checking in with him from over there to see how his journey's going. But he's a wonderful fella to get behind. So the Wheelhouse is throwing our full support behind you, Roop.
Yeah, it kicks off June 13, over 4,900 kilometres, Kate. My goodness me. Yeah,
And not
good
a
luck
lot
to
of
him.
sleep. So it's not
No.
like a Tour de France stage. They ride through the night and only rest when they need to. So,
Yeah, and all in less than 12 days, all going well. So
oh,
what an achievement. We'll be keeping an eye on him. We'll try and speak to him midway through his adventure, but you can go to the, what is it, Escape Collective? Yeah,
yeah.
.com and
Get yourself
buy
one of
his
those
hideous
Hawaiian shirts.
Hawaiian shirts and get behind him, or at least leave him a little message of encouragement. Good on you, Roop.
Indeed. Good on you, Root. Hey, Merksy,
Hello.
are you happy with your co-hosting? I think we've had a great week here.
Not really. I've hit a few wrong buttons. We're not meant to show back here. Hey?
No, well, and if you're only listening, I can tell you that behind Merksy, he's sitting in a control room. There are all the screens and whatnot, and all the going-ons,
Feeds, all the races.
So it's got a bit of a multitask happening. But thank you for joining us for another wonderful episode of The Wheelhouse. Next one is going to be massive because it will be 50 episodes, which is just sensational and unbelievable that we've been stringing them together for nearly a year now. So well done, team.
I know. I've got to go buy some party poppers and some streamers confetti for that.
You do, yeah.
It's
a confetti cannon, maybe a golden buzzer, like
see what we've got in the budget.
like on Australia's Got Talent. And Merksy, go and get some sleep because the Dauphiné is coming and it's going to be exciting. So we need to be fresh.
All right, will do.
We'll see you guys soon. Make sure you like, share, follow, and thank you for joining us for another week of The Wheelhouse.